Hello, good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Sir Goffe, how are you doing?
Yes, I'm great. Let's start.
Good afternoon.
What was that? I'm not hearing you.
Oh, I was saying I hear the feedback.
Oh, from me?
No, not from you.
Okay.
All right, so let's make a start. We're live. I want to say welcome to everyone who's joining us in virtual reality. Welcome to another of our JIPO webinar series. Today we'll be having a very interesting discussion looking at the protection of country names and nation brands. This is a topic which is very dear, of course, to many of us. As a small island developing state, Jamaica has a global footprint that way exceeds our size. And so, we're always trying to arrive at the best way to protect and to maximize the benefits from that large global footprint. How we do so, has sometimes involved many different persons and agencies, ideas and proposals. In fact, it's been almost probably, I would say, over 15 years that we have been looking at this issue in the government, looking at it from the perspective of how can we protect the name from being used arbitrarily, the name Jamaica. How can we protect our nation brands, things that Jamaica is known for globally, which of course we include a part of the culture, music, food, dance, and of course a lot that makes us, unique to the world, sports, etc. So we're trying to see, what is the current status of the proposals and plans in that regard, and how we can make some tangible steps towards effective protection for country names and nation brands. So I'm Marcus Goffe, Deputy Director of Legal Counsel here at JIPO. I'll be the moderator for this afternoon's discussion. And we're pleased to have with us this afternoon Mr. Gabriel Heron, Vice President of Marketing at JAMPRO. He'll be the first speaker. We'll also be hearing from Ms. Lilyclaire Bellamy, Executive Director at JIPO. And thirdly, Mr. Donovan White, Director of Tourism at the Jamaica Tourist Board. So please stay with us. We're going to have a very interesting discussion and, of course, interactive discussion too. And I know you will be enriched by it. So I'm going to open the floor and introduce Mr. Heron as our first presenter. Mr. Heron is, as I said, the VP of Marketing at JAMPRO. He's a strategic marketing and business development executive with 40 years of experience in leading strategic marketing. Has extensive local experience and overseas experience on a range of strategic projects, and believes a perfect balance between ingenuity and analysis delivers the best value return. His major career achievements include launching the highly impacting global 360-degree marketing campaigns, which targeted Jamaica and the Caribbean diaspora. He's also led the marketing of the Caribbean-owned online remittance payment service to the UK, USA, and Canadian markets. He's also proud to have worked with homegrown iconic Jamaican brands, Jerry and Nephew, and Jamaica National. I'm going to now introduce then Mr. Heron to present to us on his views and perspectives of how we can best protect country names and nation brands. Mr. Heron, over to you, sir. We're not hearing you. I don't know if you're on mute or is it just me not hearing you?
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
Thank you very much, Sir Goffe. I was just saying that's an extensive introduction. Much appreciated. But without further ado, we have an important topic that I know a lot of persons are interested to hear about in the nation brand. And as you mentioned, it's been about 15 years that we've been on this path, both JAMPRO and JIPO. So I'm actually very pleased that we are partnering on this initiative right now. Let me go ahead and share my screen. So open. Is it giving me an option here to share? I'm trying to. Okay. Sorry, gentle folks. Just give me 1 second. All right. Can everybody see my screen? I just want confirmation.
Yes, we can see.
Okay, perfect. All right. So I was saying that we are at a point now where nation branding is quite critical, and even pre-COVID, we're at it is important to be able to tell our story and to control our narrative, because if you don't, then somebody else will tell it for you and also control your brand or have impact on your brand. And from a personal perspective, that is what is very important now. All right, so the outline of the presentation I have today is what is Jamaica's brand. There's an overview of what we think it is. What is a nation brand? Because I don't want to make assumptions that everybody on the webinar understands what a nation brand is, relative to a country brand as well. Because there are semantic reasonings around the differentiation from an academic perspective. And then benefits of a nation brand and attempts at developing a nation brand and where we are now. In a nutshell, that's what my presentation is about. And I'll also cover geographical indications as well, which is a component that sits within the nation brand space. So what is Jamaica's brand? How do we see ourselves? Is this how Jamaicans see ourselves? I know that from a global cultural perspective, we are heavyweights. We are world powers from a global cultural perspective. We are known the world over for sports, for tourism. Our culture, our music, are known all corners of the world, right? But the question also is this also who we really are? I mean, how do we rank in the business environment? How do we rank in the investment environments? Do people see us as a viable option for outsourcing, for business services? So these are the questions we need to ask ourselves from a brand perspective. Right. So we generally are, as a country, our reality is that we're driven mainly by our tourist brand and our creative industry. That is the ethos that drives our global brand presence, right? Laid back, talented, we're cool, tend to be a party place, humor, and very creative, and of course fun. So a more holistic approach now would be, okay, we also have our list of personality traits as a nation. We're a stable democracy, relatively transparent, sophisticated, efficient, safe in some levels. We're dedicated citizens, educated, trustworthy, responsive, and we operate within a number of industrial spaces: mining and energy, digital, global services, infrastructure, agriculture, manufacturing, logistics, financial services, medical tourism. So this takes a more holistic look at what it is that Jamaica is, because the nation brand is a national identity that is made tangible, robust, communicable, and useful. So in other words, there has to be a use for the brand. So how do we get there? How do we reach to that point where we have a holistic entity that represents Jamaica on a whole? So we need to expand Jamaica's brand if we wish to evolve the perception of Jamaica into a holistic brand. To emphasize and focus the world on Jamaica's positive brand attributes. And this involves, of course, not only within sports, entertainment, and tourism. There's a lot more to Jamaica. We have to send a concise and clear, synchronized message about Jamaica to the world. Right. And of course, a part of the nation brand, which I'll speak to now, and the slight difference between nation brand and country brand. And they're used interchangeably, as we all know. But the thought is, and there's a lot of thought on this distinction, is that country brand tends to be more outward focusing, destination place. More looking at how does the world see Jamaica? Whereas a nation brand tends to look at, it starts from a point of more inner focusing and starts from nation building and then moves outward. So it's about engendering a sense of pride and solidarity in its citizens around a central idea or a national strategy. And then from there, we build up to the nation brand. So in a sense of the actively engaged locals and the diaspora to act as positive brand ambassadors. So that's all a part of the building of the nation brand. And of course, critical to our export is to stamp authenticity on our products versus copies. And I know that's a very sensitive issue for a lot of manufacturers and exporters locally and persons in the diaspora as well. So in a sense, we need to establish a nation brand. We've known this for quite a while now. What is a nation brand? It's more than a logo. A nation brand can be thought of a nation's attempt to create and manage a brand. So if you don't manage your brand, somebody else will manage that narrative and control or influence that narrative. So we want to get into the space where we have control of that narrative and that perception. So we're not saying that we're going to put over a veneer over who we are, but we have to represent what we do. And we have to represent it how we want to represent it, and not somebody else, and not for somebody else to tell our story. Right? So nation brand goes beyond the narrow purpose of country of origin or place brands to promote specific economic interests. Right? It's concerned with a country's whole image on an international stage. So it uses the tools of branding to alter or change the behavior, attitudes, identity, or image of a nation in a positive way. So again, we need to manage and control our narrative as our national identity in a holistic way. All right. So there are many examples of successful country brands, nation brands. Two of my favorites really is Essential Costa Rica, also because of the close proximity to where it is to Jamaica, and the mechanism within which they implemented their nation brand. It's called Essential Costa Rica, and it was generated around a central idea of Costa Rica being a very good citizen, world citizen. And initially, it was focused on tourism and a whole eco culture, and then it shifted to an all-encompassing approach to Costa Rica. And Costa Rica is now considered a technological talent pool, outsourcing destination. So there's a lot more to the Costa Rican brand based on that process that they actually went through. So there are a lot of other examples which I'll touch on just briefly. UK, they went into, they took on the whole idea of Great Britain, emphasizing the great across the different spaces, technology, entrepreneurship, knowledge, creativity, etc. So again, it's around a central idea, a central strategy, a national strategy. So some more country brands. New Zealand is a very powerful country brand, and what they've done in this regard is they've actually have different elements of the country brand. So one of the main focus is 100% pure, and this is not just in their products, but also in their tourist element as well. So it carries across both tourism as well as in their exports and product development. And a similar approach can be taken with Jamaica as well, of course, because tourism being one of the main pillars of our economy, and that will never change. We have to hold on and protect that, our tourism brand, because it is critical for Jamaica. It is who we are. But we also have to be able to engage other areas of the economy to ensure that it's a part of the holistic nation brand. Right? So some key considerations. Awareness alone does not make a strong country brand. There has to be a lot of action behind it. What are we doing, to ensure that the brand has good reputation behind just being a communication or a message being put out there, right? The nation brand strength is connected to how many consumer brands you are known for. So again, it speaks to what presence do you have in the global environment. So we have a strong tourism brand. We have a fairly strong outsourcing brand as an industry now within that space. What other areas can we expand into to establish our nation brand? Because they all play a major role in being a part of the nation brand, right? Some key elements here as well. An influential city is not enough to make a strong brand. So there's a little bit more to it than that as well. Okay. And the key commercial objectives of nation branding are to boost export promotion, inward investment, and promotion and tourism. So that is critical here because what we want the nation brand to be useful. We want to monetize our cultural global dominance, our prowess. We want to be able to have that brand equity in the knowledge of Jamaica in our products and protect those products. And I get to that in a little bit. All right. Nation brands have most momentum in technology, innovation, and sustainability, and that is very important in this time frame now, where we know that technology and innovation are particularly important, not just within the COVID period here, but post-COVID as well. All right. So, what are the benefits of a nation brand? I'm hoping that I'm preaching to the choir here, that we all know what the main benefits are, but I will go ahead and I will re-emphasize nonetheless, right? So exponentially, the expected benefits are to exponentially increase investments and exports in the country. And this will positively impact economic growth, of course, because as you drive investments and exports, economic growth will follow. And we want to raise Jamaica's profile as a premier business capital of the region. Based on World Bank reports, we are already number one. We're actually ranked number 6 for ease of doing business in the world globally, and we're ranked number 1 in the region. So we want to be able to incorporate metrics like that into our nation brand and communicate that clearly as well. How many persons across the world actually knows and recognizes Jamaica for a place to easily do and start a business? All right. So things like that for consideration. And of course, this is where the people element comes into it now. Invigorate national pride and loyalty towards a central idea. So Vision 2030, for argument's sake, whatever the national strategy is, with Vision 2030, is critical because it has to be from a point where it resonates. All right. So some examples of country brand campaigns and actual benefits in other countries. So for France, who launched their a 3-year campaign in 2004, they had a 35% rise in FDI in 2006. So you see, there was a direct connection with the launching of the nation brand and the rise in FDI over the 2-year period. It was a 3-year campaign, and by the end of the second year, they saw a significant increase relative to previous years. Colombia, again, you've seen significant increase in exports. Also because, from a brand equity perspective and awareness perspective, you're driving this knowledge globally about both in terms of products as well as investments, as well as tourism. So all of that has an impact on the nation brand and how your global awareness will impact your economy. So Great Britain, let's move to Great Britain now. Actual ROI to 2015 was 1.2 billion. This is from a funding of only 113.5 million pounds. So you can see the actual return on investment over the period. What is interesting about Great Britain here is that 60% of the funding actually came from the private sector. So one of the challenges that we've had over the years, as on an update, is that we've always had limited budget to drive through the nation brand. As a developing state, small island developing state, we have budgetary concerns, and those concerns probably won't go away. So there is a need to also look to or engage the private sector to say, okay, guys, we all have to benefit from this approach. How can we pool our funds to see how we can develop a nation brand in that regard? So that's something that we can explore. So Great Britain did it. 60% of the funding came from private sectors, and the rest came from the government. And the return on the investment is clear over the time period. So I just touched on some attempts of developing a nation brand just now, and I'll go into just a bit. So in terms of to give context to where we are now and where we want to get to. So JAMPRO initiated consultancy in 2005. to prepare the country brand for opportunities that emanate from hosting Cricket World Cup in 2007. Again, I mentioned budgetary constraints. The project ended in 2006. JIPO also took up the mantle, and engaged World Intellectual Property Office to conduct a feasibility study. The world-renowned, and they commissioned the world-renowned Simon Anholt to conduct the feasibility study. So, the study confirmed that the nexus of Jamaica's brand was in culture and the creative economy. So we know that our culture, our music, our entertainment, which funnels into the tourism as well, has strong potential for Jamaica. And in essence, and that is where we can develop a mega brand. That hasn't changed. Of course, again, it was cost prohibitive to develop a strategy at that point. So where we are today, in 2017, JAMPRO commissioned a survey, a global survey, and just to give you background on the type of survey it was a digital survey that did an analysis of 6.7 million searches for Jamaica online. And the survey really focused on 5 main areas once the search had to do with Jamaica. Firstly, exports, investments, tourism, talent, and prominence. Now, I'll highlight here, tourism dominated the search at 3.9 million results. 58%, almost 60% of the searches for Jamaica was around tourism. Now, mind you, I'll remind you guys, this is a digital survey based on the search, which is a reflection of the thoughts, the needs, and the areas of the ideas around what the global market is interested in. For consideration as well as prominence. Prominence is really around a reputation. So sports, entertainment, this is general reputation searches around Jamaica. So what are some of the areas that we want to really focus on? And you will notice that searches for exports is 2.1%. Searches for investment, 1.6%. Searches for talent, 6.7%. So there is somewhat of a lag or a gap that we need to close, and we need to, to show that there are other opportunities within Jamaica, within investments and export, as entrepreneurs, as business leaders, that will drive that awareness. So there's some amount of, there's a lot of work to be done to develop a nation brand, to present a more holistic approach. Tourism, as I mentioned, is a major pillar, but what we want to ensure that to ensure that we're resilient and we mitigate risk, we add other alternative to the economy to ensure that we are more resilient going forward. And particularly during this COVID period, this showed this vulnerability within our economy, right? So let's look at trade and tourism again. From a regional perspective, for tourism, we rank really well. We ranked ninth for tourism. However, globally, we ranked 64, which is not bad, right? But when we look at trade, we rank 10th for the region. But when we look at globally, 103. So again, we're not necessarily seen as a strong trade entity. And this is an area that we'd want to close the gap on, right? Country brand index, I won't get into this in major detail, but we're ranked 51 out of 75. So we have a way to go, okay? So other main takeaways from the global survey: strong country appeal. We know that we have a strong country appeal. Establish awareness in the prominence dimension. Our reputation is strong. Tourism has strong appeal. We all know this already. Competitors have high growth in investment. So our competitors are moving in this space of investment. Dominican Republic, Cuba, Trinidad, they're all improving in their investment profile. Coffee and fruits are the most valued exports, where Jamaica is seen as a place to work and live, which is good. High dependence on the US, and one of the most positive brands in the region, and that's critical. So we're known globally for all-inclusive resorts, beaches, and cruises, and I won't get into that, of course, right? But we're also known globally for culture, music, gastronomy. So these make up the strong elements of our brand. Finally, we're known globally for coffee, rum, And Jamaica currently has geographical indications for rum and jerk, which is critical. And also Blue Mountain Coffee is registered as a certification mark. Right. So what are geographical indications and why are they so critical under a nation brand, the concept of a nation brand? A geographical indication is a sign identifying a product originating in a certain territory or a given quality, reputation, or other characteristic of the product is essentially attributed to that geographical region. So in a sense, it will enable us to reduce the number of counterfeit products overseas, to enable that the number of copies overseas are reduced, and that the authenticity of Jamaican products are realized, and that so it is a differentiator, and it offers a key to higher and more stable export earnings. So it adds that additional margin. The impact of geographical indications: more than 10,000 legally projected GIs exist globally, mainly in wines and spirits. Right, together, developing countries have about 10% of the total. That's quite significant. 90% are from 30 organizations from OECD, which is an organization for economic cooperation and development. Their annual value is estimated at $50 million, which is very significant. So GIs provide a unique form of intellectual and cultural property, and their potential to provide a sustainable means of competitiveness. Competitiveness is the key criteria here as it relates to exporting of goods, right? So what's the impact of GI? And I choose some top examples. France, as we know, is known for its wines and spirits and luxury brands. So from that perspective, it has a lot of GIs. They have a market value is almost 19 billion euro, right? It's close to 10% of the national food market's total value. So you understand the importance of establishing GIs for the country. Italy has 430 GIs, which generate a value of some 12 billion and employ about 300,000 persons. Spain, 133 GIs, generating approximately 3.5 billion. So, and I'm saying all this to show the importance of geographical indications and why we need to establish more. And also, there are other elements within that space as well, which I won't get into here. Maybe Dr. Goffe can speak to that more. So we need to protect the nation brands, and the World Intellectual Property Organization members are seeking to protect nation brands, country brands, GIs, and icons via the JIPO Committee on Trademarks, of which Jamaica is included. This will preventing the use of indications consisting of or containing country names in relation to goods or services. So again, protecting country names against conflicting marks, and this is critical, business identifiers and domain names. So again, ensuring that the Jamaican products are authentic for our discerning consumers overseas, so they get the real Jamaican products, right? What are the essential elements of a successful nation brand? And I'll finish here shortly. We need to have a brand strategy based on a central idea, a national strategy. So the brand, the nation brand can't be counter to who we are. It has to be aligned with the national strategy. We also have to establish an organizational structure to manage that brand strategy. Good examples, as I mentioned, is Enterprise Estonia. They have a digital national strategy which they developed years gone by, and the nation brand encapsulates that and communicates it very well. Similar for Essential Costa Rica. They developed a national strategy, and the nation brand then reflected it and put it out globally. We also need to establish clear KPIs and a measurement process, because what gets measured gets done, and we can reflect and improve. And finally, management and monitoring of the brand and identity. And this is the marketing side of it, of pushing out the nation brand globally. All right, so quick update on where we are now. So everybody wants to know where we are now before we move on to, how do we protect once we get to establishing our nation brand. So we've gone through global brand recognition research. How does the world see us? I just gave you a snippet of the Bloom Consulting survey that was done. There was also a local brand perception survey and how do we see ourselves. So that has been completed. And that we've done presentations where we have now cabinet buying into the nation brand strategy, and we've received approval. The next phase, however, is phase 1, which is where we are on the cusp of starting phase 1, which is about strategy and ideation. So we're going to develop the strategy, identify key elements that align with the national strategy, and outline main consideration, of course, approach to implementation, and then setting up a monitoring and evaluation framework, right? This involves the governance structure and then proposed KPIs, very critical. We've established a nation brand initiative governance structure, which I have on screen here, to manage the phase 1 process once we begin to implement it, right? Phase 2 is the creative development. So all the marketing collateral and the communication around it, creating the creative design. What do we want to reflect as the country brand, as a nation brand? Identifying the sub-brands, what are the guidelines, what are the permissions, the GIs that we'll have established, and of course, a detailed communication plan, both local and global, and moving it into the distribution. And then phase 3, of course, is campaign implementation, deploying the international campaign and activities that have been earmarked to manage the perception of brand Jamaica on the international market. This is quite critical. Again, aligning with the national strategy and what we do or what we are doing, because it has to be authentic. It has to represent the core pillars of Jamaica. And of course, locally, to drive that brand promise and that central idea, to ensure that there is authenticity in the nation brand. And then we monitor and evaluate the strategy as we move forward. All right. And that is my presentation for you all. Thank you very much. Much appreciated. I hope I presented enough of information for discussion that I'm looking forward to getting to know. Over to you, back over to you, Dr. Goffe.
Right, so Heron, thanks very much for that. Quite thorough, quite informative. I see you bring into several different areas and aspects, so thank you for that. And I hope that we certainly will have some discussion and Q&A for our audience. All right, so continuing on the program, we're going to invite Ms. Lilyclaire Bellamy, Executive Director of JIPO, to speak on the topic. Ms. Bellamy is a Commonwealth Fellow, Attorney at Law, Executive Director of JIPO. She has extensive experience in IP law, having several years worked in health, environment, gender, child issues, as well as advising the government on IP laws and policies, representing Jamaica overseas at various programs. And of course, she is also a director of the Pharmaceutical Council of Jamaica, Scientific Research Council, National Nutraceutical Industry of Jamaica, and a former vice chairman of the World Association of Girl Guides and Girl Scouts. So, Ms. Bellamy, over to you to present on the topic.
Thanks so much. Okay. All right. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our continuing series. We've been doing a number of webinars. We started as a result of COVID. We started our first webinars during Intellectual Property Week, which was held in April of this year. This afternoon, we're looking at the protection of country names and nation brands. The desire to protect country names has been around for decades. In fact, the first push towards the protection of country names occurred in the 1980s. It didn't find much currency then. Basically, at the World Intellectual Property Organization, there was a move to have the Paris Convention for the Protection of Industrial Property. And just to break down what industrial property refers to, that would be in the intellectual property law context, trademarks, designs, and perhaps if you want to, well, it extends also to cover patents. But in the specific case, what we were looking at was amending Article 6 of the Paris Convention to allow for a more robust protection of country names. Basically, what this would achieve would be that someone could not get a trademark that incorporated the words Jamaica in it if they couldn't show that they had a direct relationship with Jamaica, or that the product that they were producing originated in Jamaica and was made by Jamaicans with Jamaican inputs. That is a continuing discussion that is now taking place at the World Intellectual Property Organization. We revised that discussion in the year 2009, and since that time we have attended meetings of the Standing Committee on Trademarks, Designs and Geographical Indications at the World Intellectual Property Organization to try and get support from the other member states of the World Intellectual Property Organization for the protection of country names. So that protection would not only be for Jamaica, but would be for all country names. We're trying to ensure that there is a united and consistent approach in how country names are used by member states when they're registering trademarks. Marcus Goffe, our Deputy Director, Legal Counsel, who is the moderator this afternoon, he has been to quite a few of those Standing Committee on Trademark meetings, and we have managed to bring a number of member states into the fold to support our push to get the country names protected. And I'm going to ask Marcus to elaborate on that when I'm finished my well, perhaps after we have the presentation from tourism, we will share some more on that with you, because that is a critical aspect. Because if you have a global treaty that looks at it, then it is easier to achieve the protection. But the whole thing regarding nation brands, this, as you had heard from the previous speaker, this is something that has been at the forefront of JIPO's consideration and really the government of Jamaica for quite some time. In 2005, we had internal discussions here at the Jamaica Intellectual Property Office, and you would have heard that there were discussions also at JAMPRO, which is a sister agency of JIPO, where we were looking at how can we ensure that there is recognition and a consistent and coherent message surrounding the brand of Jamaica and what it is that we want people to know when they hear about Jamaica. This basically also ties in with our Vision 2030 objective. We're now in 2020. This discussion started in 2005. We're really close to 2030 when we're supposed to recognize and realize the aspirations that are incorporated in our Vision 2030. We had a report done by Simon and Holt, and I won't rehearse all of it again, as there was clear articulation on it earlier. But that report highlighted a number of areas and basically suggested things that we could do to bring about that holistic approach to the nation branding. As the Intellectual Property Office, and in keeping with the World Trade Organization, trade-related aspects of intellectual property rights agreement, commonly referred to as the TRIPS agreement, Jamaica put in place a specific standalone law to deal with the protection of geographical indications. We had that law in place and we entered into agreement. The government of Jamaica entered into agreement with the government of Switzerland, in particular the Swiss Federal Institute for Intellectual Property Rights. And we had a project with the Swiss, and that project lasted from the year 2008 to 2010. Basically, what our project sought to do was to provide training and technical support to Jamaican producers of authentic Jamaican products that could be registered as geographical indications, and also technocrats. The project focused on three main areas. It focused on rum, which would fall in the category of wines and spirits under the TRIPS agreement. And it also focused on Blue Mountain coffee and jerk. At the end of the project, we had 3 groups that we were working closely with: the coffee producers, the Spirits Pool Association of Jamaica, and jerk producers, which did not have an organization or an entity. However, at the end of the project, the Jamaica Jerk Producers Association came into being. So we had the Jamaica Jerk Producers Association, and they actually registered the first geographical indication under the Protection of Geographical Indications Act, which is a specific law that deals with the protection of geographical indications. The importance of this in terms of the development of Jamaica is that with the production of Jamaica jerk, authentic Jamaica jerk, you need persons who are going to be producing the raw materials. And so by having an authentic geographical indication, what you do is you encourage rural development and also development of your agricultural sector. It also facilitates tourism from the point of view that persons will come to do a tour to see, okay, I love Jamaica jerk, but how do we get Jamaica jerk? Well, one critical ingredient for Jamaica jerk is peppers. So from the Jamaica jerk project, we had the establishment of a pepper farmers group. So basically, you see how a geographical indication can not only result in a benefit for export, but it also gives you a local benefit. It helps to prevent the rural to urban drift, and it also develops communities, and it also ensures that the product that reaches to the market is an authentic Jamaican product. So the Jamaica Jerk Producers Association registered the first geographical indication in Jamaica. And if you look in the supermarket for products, authentic Jamaica Jerk products, you'll see the geographical indications logo, which is the logo that is directly behind me. That's the geographical indications logo. So that logo on a product signifies to you that you're utilizing an authentic product and you're supporting a specific product from a specific country. So let's say you visit a country outside of Jamaica and you see a product on the shelf and you want to buy that Jamaican jerk product. If you don't see that logo, you know it's not an authentic Jamaica jerk product. So that is your signal to ensure that you are buying something that is authentic and supporting your nation. So we had that product, we had that project, and it continues, and we're doing work with a number of other producers of other authentic Jamaican products. For example, and this is perhaps more for women would appreciate this more perhaps than men. We use black castor oil, authentic Jamaican black castor oil in our hair, and it helps your hair. If you're losing your hair and you put it in, it helps to make the hair grow back. And there are also other medicinal purposes for authentic Jamaican castor oil. So there's a castor oil group that they're actually working towards getting geographical indication certification. For those of you who like honey, there are honey producers in Jamaica that we are working with now for them to have the registration of a geographical indication for authentic Jamaican honey. So in the instance of once they get the certification, then they'll be able to use that logo. And that logo will only go on products that satisfy the standards. And the geographical indication is a much higher standard than a trademark, because what a GI says to you is that you're being told that the product is an authentic product, it satisfies a really high standard, and only people who are willing to work within that standard will get that certification. So it's something that is to be looked at, and if we think of one of our neighbors in this hemisphere, tequila out of Mexico. Tequila is an example of a very successful geographical indication from this region. I mentioned about the country names, which we reintroduced. It started in the 80s, and Jamaica reintroduced it in 2009. But what was the significance of 2009 and the country name protection? Actually, if you can think back and remember 2008. 2008 was a significant year for Jamaica in terms of the World Championships and the Beijing Olympics. In both of those events, Jamaica was extremely successful in terms of the medals that we were able to achieve. And we saw a direct correlation here at the Intellectual Property Office with persons seeking to register products from Jamaica that weren't Jamaican products. So we recognize there is this great demand, which was reinforced at that time, of persons wanting to use the word Jamaica on their products, even though they had no relation with Jamaica. And unfortunately, this is true not only for persons who are non-Jamaicans, but also for Jamaicans in the diaspora who hanker for home and want to produce a Jamaican product. But unfortunately, they're not in Jamaica, so the ingredients that they use are not authentically Jamaican. So they produce a product and they put it on the market, but it's not really a Jamaican product. So that signals to us as the Intellectual Property Office that there was a need actually to have some protection in place to ensure that when you see a trademark that says Jamaican coffee or Jamaican jerk or anything Jamaican, that it really had a relation and a direct relationship with Jamaica. And it wasn't that your grandmother had come from Jamaica, and so in honor of your grandmother, you're going to put Jamaica on your product and you're going to put the Jamaican flag on your product, but really it has absolutely nothing to do with Jamaica. So to encourage Jamaicans in the production of authentic Jamaican products, we at JIPO had an authentic Jamaica design competition where we encouraged persons to produce authentic Jamaican craft. So that's another way. And then we encourage them to produce the craft and also to utilize the registration system we have here at JIPO for designs. But in keeping with authentic designs and with geographical indications, there's also the need for the protection of our traditional knowledge, because it is that traditional knowledge in a number of instances that gives us our geographical indications or gives us our designs. So the government of Jamaica has been working not only locally, but within the region to have a law put in place that would protect traditional knowledge and traditional cultural expressions of Jamaicans. The final thing I want to say is that the Intellectual Property Office, JIPO, was also quite instrumental, and this also speaks to your brand. Jamaica is well known internationally for reggae music, but a number of persons have been trying to claim reggae as belonging to them. So we worked closely with the Ministry at the time of Tourism and Entertainment and the Ministry of Culture to see how we could have reggae protected. The result was the Intangible Cultural Heritage sector of UNESCO recognized reggae as part of the Intangible Cultural Heritage of Jamaica. All of this is critical to the nation brand strategy and also the protection of country names and things that are authentically Jamaican. Thanks so much. That's it.
Thank you very much, Ms. Bellamy. So that we count of the many different activities that have been ongoing which JIPO has been involved in and spearheaded. I think that, if we were to look at all that has been done over the several decades and still is being done, we would see that, we have made several strides and we have different parts of the nation brand, that are fairly well protected. So perhaps what we need to look at is some, more cohesion, how we can apply some IP rights, to be able to legally protect some of them. But once again, for me, I would now want to introduce our third guest speaker, Mr. Donovan White, who's of course our Director of Tourism from the Jamaica Tourist Board. Mr. White was appointed Director of Tourism in February 2018, bringing to the JTB over 20 years experience as a senior executive in marketing and business development. A strategist and business leader, he is responsible for promoting and further enhancing Jamaica's reputation as the premier destination in the global marketplace, pursuing an aggressive and robust marketing agenda that keenly focus on technology, all with a view to exceeding major growth goals. Since taking the helm of JTB, Mr. White has strategized to ensure the destination has continued its growth trajectory. In 2018 and 2019, Jamaica exceeded the 4 million mark for total visitor arrivals, quite a feat that we accomplished. Mr. White has placed great emphasis on technology, guiding the implementation of award-winning digital activations, including Join Me in Jamaica, the hugely popular Escape to Jamaica. He spearheaded the launch of the destination's Heartbeat of the World campaign, strengthening Jamaica's position as a global, culturally relevant brand. Under his leadership, Jamaica has re-entered the Asian markets of Japan and India and is poised to experience growth from these areas. An avid sportsman, Mr. White has won many medals at National Boys Championships during his secondary school years. He's director of the Premier League Clubs Association and is also co-chair of the marketing subcommittee of the Jamaica Football Federation and president of the Waterhouse Football Club. So very active in many ways in Jamaica's brand or brands. And so we welcome Mr. White now to share with us from a unique JTB perspective how the brand can be better positioned and protected in this time. So Mr. White, welcome, sir.
Thank you, Dr. Goffe. And I'm very pleased and honored to be in the company of yourself, as well as Mr. Heron, my good friend, and Miss Bellamy. Today is an interesting conversation. We're talking about protection of country brands and names. And one of the interesting things I've observed and I've noted, and I want to start by mentioning, is Gabriel's presentation was an interesting one because it is something that I believe all of us who have worked in this area of marketing, and particularly with our national brand, as always clamored for the importance of creating a national brand, brand marks as well as brand campaign for Jamaica as a country. The Tourist Board has for many years been the standard bearers of promoting Jamaica across the world, because tourism has been a part of our existence, a part of our livelihoods from time immemorial. In fact, this date back to probably as far back as 1945, which is when I think the Tourist Board was formed. Interestingly, Gabriel in his presentation mentioned tourism, and I counted it in tally form 17 times, which is quite a feat, and I think it is indicative of the importance that the tourism sector plays in terms of really bringing our brand and the power of our brand together. And that's what the Tourist Board has done. So we have gone to the end of of Gabriel's brand strategy build journey to identify the assets and the characteristics of the destination that will allow us to truly be able to build tactical as well as mass appeal campaigns to continue to drive the development and the growth of our tourism product as an economic tool, which ultimately is what brands are about. They're about creating economic value and windfall for the brand that it's being created for. And so our focus has been, how do we take all these assets, all these characteristics of Jamaica, and mold them into opportunities of messages that we can use to drive tourism. Now, I start there because it's important then to understand how the tourism sector and indeed how the tourist board has positioned these messages and why. In 2019, tourism represented some 34% of our real GDP growth, 25% of employment, or 1 in 4 employed persons in Jamaica worked in the tourism sector. 50% of our foreign exchange earnings come from tourism, and 60% of our foreign direct investment comes because of the tourism industry. So we are extremely interlinked into the fabric of our economic development and economic growth. From that perspective, tourism doesn't stand alone, because without all the other aspects, all the other sectors and industries across Jamaica, there's no tourism. And so tourism, functions or can only be as good as the rest of Jamaica and the rest of our developing sectors, namely agriculture, manufacturing, trade, commerce, retail. I mean, and I could go on and on and on, of all the sectors across Jamaica that makes tourism and makes the tourism product what it is today. So what we have seen is that we have had to go ahead of the creation of this big national campaign and carve a niche within the global market space that our brand can live. Interestingly, 15 years ago, there was still no international registration of the Jamaica brand, or sorry, Jamaica name internationally. And one of the first things we did 15 years ago was to register Jamaica as a trademark globally. And so the tourist board now holds that trademark registration of those 7 letters spelling Jamaica globally, and that has allowed us to be able to utilize that trademark under the government of Jamaica to promote Jamaica right across the world. One of the things that I didn't actually plan a presentation for today, but I thought it would be interesting. If I could get this screen to share, to be able to show you what, for example, we our international advertising agency, in building the last brand campaign that we've done called Heartbeat of the World, was able to develop in terms of our own guardrails, our brand guidelines, if you will, as to how the brand is presenting and is to be used. And forgive me, I'm trying to utilize this Chrome service to share my screen. I don't know if I can. Okay. If you give me a second, I will be able to do this, I think. Okay. I think I'm getting there, folks. Just give me maybe a second. I think I'm almost there. So now if I can anybody just say if they're seeing my screen?
Yes, we're seeing it, sir. Thank you.
And you're seeing communication guardrails.
Yes.
Okay, so so what I wanted to give the audience an opportunity to see is how we have for touristic purposes created a brand guideline as to the use of the campaign marks and the Jamaica trademark that we have created for international consumption. So I won't go to all the pages, but just to give you a sense as to what's in these guardrails. So there's the goals and principles. So from a communication perspective, our goals are to inspire, to connect, to respect, to educate, and to motivate. Those are we've kept these guardrails extremely succinct but very clear because we use them for ourselves, but more importantly, all our partners around the world, our airline partners, or tour operator partners, or travel agent partners, or OTA partners, which is the online travel agencies, partners like Expedia and Hotel.com and those kinds of companies. We do promotional and tactical arrangements with them, and they have to use our brand for these campaigns. And to be able to do that, we have to provide the guardrails that ensure that they are respecting of our brand, they're respecting of our brand principles, and the role that it plays in the world as was one of the foremost recognized brands across the world. So we've had to ensure that we put these guards in place to ensure that we communicate effectively and seamlessly in all platforms. In terms of our communication principles, we've said make it clear and concise, add value to your communication, personify your voice, make it shareable. In today's world of technology, social media, and digital media, we have to be able to pivot and to be able to move seamlessly across all platforms. And then one of the things we've said is avoid sales speak. It shouldn't be about the sale. It should be about the value. So those are just some of the points. When we are writing from a communication standpoint, we use standard English. First person communication is important. Active. We want to always maintain a strong call to action in what we say. We remain formal, but we also have an informal style of communicating depending on the market or the segment of the market that we're targeting. And then so from an overall checklist of things that we must achieve with our communication as part of our brand guidelines is to showcase authentic and unique experiences, create positive perceptions of Jamaica, speak with, not at, visitors, highlight unique Jamaican experiences based on the brand pillars, and inspire travelers to visit Jamaica now. So how to write our name in text, that's also important because that's our brand. Our name is our brand. And so many have asked why the color that we have chosen. Well, these were benchmarked on the extreme survey and research testing globally over the last 15 years. The vibrancy of the the color, which is, by the way, rhodamine red and not pink. Some people want to call it pink or fuchsia. It's actually rhodamine red. Red and purple are the two most distinguishable colors in the color spectrum globally. And so we were fortunate to be able to own this color against the brand as the brand was created. Now, this may evolve as based on some of the work that Gabriel and the team at JAMPRO and the wider government of Jamaica team that's working on the national brand, is what we end on when we get to phase 1, 2, and 3, as Gabriel outlined. This may evolve into something else, but for now, it is one of the most distinguishable marks globally and certainly one of the most represented in the world of tourism today. So we're extremely proud of this, and we own it, we wear it, and we represent it in every part of the world that we promote Brand Jamaica. Crafting in our communication channels. Now, one of the things that you'll see in a second is that we have this particular brand campaign was developed over the last 18 months, and we are in an era of where the communication and media channels have changed radically. And so what we have done is to ensure that we can speak through the line, that we have a single representation in all forms of media. So for example, for our IG, you will always see this screen that you see here is how the IG page is represented, and it will not change unless there's a reason to change it. And what we've done essentially is create these icons as part of the brand characteristics that represent something specific about our brand, whether it's our nature, or the nature of the island, or food, activities on the island, culture, music, people, and wellness are all signature characteristics of the brand that we represent in the tourism space. And these were all again out of research, feedback, and testing. Right, so we did a significant amount of work on that side of the development. So I'm showing you the end product, but this was 18 months of work every single day, in and out of the destination, in and out of research and analysis. In terms of just a sample of how the copy is created, the tone of voice that goes into the messaging, the call to action that's used, in terms of adding something called Learn More as part of our CTA. And what that does is that connects you back to visitjamaica.com, which then allows you to see more about the content that you're looking at on IG, but also gives you more detailed information about varying aspects of the destination, and allow that visitor to traverse our space even in a more detailed way. And then hashtags and other mentions is a critical part of how we've created a larger trail of following Visit Jamaica online. Hashtagging is now a big part of brand utilization and brand utilities that allows us to live longer in our digital spaces, but also to transcend spaces by getting into different conversations and keeping the messages alive for longer periods. Twitter again is used extensively in our information carry, as well as in our engagement of audiences around the world. We have also added to the whole business of our digital spaces a community management team that is currently and continuing to develop and evolve, so that we can participate more in the online conversations around the brand, around our messaging, and around creating more demand for Jamaica in all spaces. Facebook, no different. Again, you'll notice that the consistency of the insignia used to represent the brand in all of the spaces is very almost identical, may vary in size, but identical in terms of the brand and the colors. The YouTube, no different. Same kind of array of utilization of how our space is populated. So there's a consistency about how we present ourselves as a brand, and how we use that space to ensure that we get success. And so our quick checklist of social media success is: use short yet impactful copy with a clear takeaway. Don't just enumerate facts, make it personal and relatable. Use content suited for the platform. 6-second content is best suited for Instagram, while 60-second is best suited for YouTube. Things like those we have spent the time to detail and as well to understand, so that the utilization of our spaces and our brand remains consistent, but also remains functional for the user. Use hashtags to amplify content reach. Use heartbeat campaign words as searchable descriptors to drive traffic to posts of the Jamaica Tourist Board website, which I just spoke about. Highlight what makes Jamaica unique and different from other destinations, but in a conversational way. In terms of our website, again, it is where we live. It is where you can find all things Jamaica, from that supports our brand and campaign strategies. So we are drivers of tourism, but we're also drivers of the economy. So we don't just focus on largely focus on the beautiful pictures, the beautiful scenery, the beautiful activities, things to do, place to go, food to eat, music to listen to. All those things are all features of our domain. But what we also do is we use it for as a massive communication tool. So that while there's visitjamaica.com for the visitors, there's also jtbonline.org, where you can find where our news people, our media friends, our media partners utilize that page even more to get information about Jamaica, or to receive news information, news bulletins, news releases, and so on from Jamaica. So we have created within the brand and within the campaigns an ability to communicate and to pivot. First, from an economic standpoint, which is to drive business to Jamaica from a tourism perspective, but also to be able to drive information outwards to media and other partners using a separate domain, but a connected domain, because you can click from one to the other from either. And I think that was important for us to make that connection in terms of the utility. Television, I won't go too much into this, but I mean, those of us who have followed the trails and exploits of the Jamaica Tourist Board over the years know that we have over the years done fantastically great TV commercials to promote Jamaica with some awesome headlines, awesome call to actions. My personal favorite is One Love, the One Love campaign. But there's been so many fantastic campaigns that have been driven by our many advertising agencies over the years. But the one thing that has remained constant is the use of those seven letters that make Jamaica and make the trademark that we have lodged in against the world. So like I said, I didn't do a presentation per se, but I thought this was already prepared material that we use on a daily basis that I thought would make the point in terms of how we have taken the brand Jamaica and how we've created it into our new word mark across the world, to aspire, which is aspirational, but also inspirational, heartbeat of the world. We feel we have so much of what the world wants and what the world is inspired by. And Jamaica in and of itself have so many larger than life personalities that have made this brand truly global, that we feel we sit in the middle of the world like a beaming light, or a flashing light. And that is the outward trajectory that we have brought to creating this aura around Jamaica as a brand. What you're looking at is one utilization of our mega billboards that we use in different parts of the world, mostly in the United States. But you see this along the highway, driving along High 95 or I-20 or wherever you're in the States or in Canada. And it speaks to you. It says something not just about tourism, but it says something about something that's even larger than tourism, which is Jamaica. And that's the feeling we get. That's the feeling, that's the feedback that we have. And that's the aura and confidence that we take to the marketplace. Again, just some of the pillars that we build out, the same pillars that I spoke of earlier that you can see on all of our digital and website pages. They're utilized in terms of building out the content that we use to represent these pillars. So again, this is all, you know, more on the tactical side, but I thought it was important to convey it from the perspective of how, you know, tourism has been able to use its its positioning because of the power of the Jamaica brand. And so we are participants and abled able participants in the process of developing this new nation brand that Gabriel spoke to. And we have no doubt that, you know, given that tourism is such an integral part, an integral user of our brand internationally, that we will continue to participate and to give the insights that we've had for so many years into truly and finally creating that single message, single utilization, single image and insignia that represents Jamaica, whether it's for tourism, for investments, or for any other economic activity. So again, it's great to be here, and I look forward to the Q&A and to participate, to continue to participate this afternoon as best as I can. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Thank you very much for that, and for sharing those images with us and giving us a brief as to what's been done over the many years. We know JTB has been, as you say, the mantle bearer for some time now. So good to know that the work continues, and that, you know, our brand is certainly in the tourism space well protected, well marketed. So thanks to all of our presenters. I'm going to open the floor for questions. So please, if you want to type your questions, or if you want to unmute your mic and to ask your questions, you can do so. So I do see one question so far. Why doesn't Jamaica brand weed and Rasta? Rasta is everywhere, and the term weed is being used in even movies. So I'm going to ask Ms. Bellamy to respond. So.
Okay, thanks, Errol, for that question. I'm not, yes? Thanks for that question, Errol. In terms of, I don't know if you recall during the presentation when I mentioned traditional knowledge, actually traditional knowledge, traditional cultural expressions, and genetic resources. At present, there is an intergovernmental committee of the World Intellectual Property Organization that is seeking to put a treaty or treaties in place to protect genetic resources, which would be, for example, what we call the weed in Jamaica, also known as ganja, and indigenous peoples and local communities, okay? Rastas are a part of our local community in Jamaica, but it has spread throughout the world. In terms of trademark protection, there are a number of members of the community who have registered trademarks in Jamaica. And there are a number of persons who have registered trademarks with replications and different aspects of the ganja plant. But Jamaica couldn't really, even though Rastafarianism originated in Jamaica, it is focused on people. So it is that group that owns Rasta as a brand per se. So when I mentioned earlier that we have put measures in place to protect our traditional knowledge, if I were to come into the intellectual property office and I said that I wanted to protect Rasta gold, the questions that the officer would ask me at JIPO is, can I show that I have a direct relationship with, or that I have permission from members of the Rastafarian community in Jamaica to protect Rasta gold? Because looking at me, I don't necessarily look like how a Rastafarian would look. So there would be a question. You've probably heard where people say that there's cultural appropriation of things that are Jamaican. Somebody would say to me, why are you trying to protect Rasta gold? And you, as far as we know, you are not a Rastafarian, it's Rasta. So we have a practice notice here at JIPO. So if someone comes in and they can't show that they have a legitimate relationship with, or a legitimate reason for using Rasta as a part of a trademark, then the office would not allow them to get that protection. But in terms of the wider global remit of this, at present, there's no international treaty or treaties in place that deal specifically with the traditional cultural expressions from an intellectual property point of view. There would be other treaties. For example, there are treaties dealing with indigenous peoples and local communities, and there are other treaties, but from the point of view of intellectual property, which is where you would get the protection of the brand, there is no international treaty at present, but each intellectual property office looks at and determines whether there is a relationship and whether you have a right to obtain the use of a trademark, whether it is for a legitimate reason or if you're trying to deceive the public. And then if it is found that your intent is deceitful, then you wouldn't be able to obtain the use of that brand. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Ms. Bellamy. So the floor is open to questions or comments from our audience members. If you want to type it, you can do so, or if you want to, let's say, unmute and ask it, you can do so. So this is where you can ask for questions or get any clarification on any particular aspect. I see a question here being posted from Mrs. Leith Forrester James. I'm excited for this presentation today. I am personally building a Portland brand by bringing all the players together in the project. Can I copyright this brand before registration? So that sounds like geographical indication. And Ms. Bellamy would be raring to share with you, how we can best capture all of the Portland geographical indication. So I'm going to ask Ms. Bellamy just to touch on that again as well.
Okay, so you're interested in having a Portland brand. So basically, what you're speaking of is things that are particular to Portland and that perhaps are not found anywhere else in Jamaica, but they're specific to Portland. What we would recommend, and you could also retain the services of an intellectual property attorney at law, but that could be a geographical indication. So what you're going to do is to highlight things that are authentically from Portland. One thing that comes to mind, before Jamaica jerk became ubiquitous, Portland was known as the home of authentic jerk in Jamaica. So that is one thing that is associated exclusively with Portland. You're also, for the purposes of tourism and exclusive tourism, Portland is also known for that. But any other product that you have that would be distinctly related to, and that persons could say that there's a direct link and association with the parish of Portland, yes, you could have that protection. What I'd encourage you to do is you could send us an email sharing, giving us more details on the project, and we would be able to have an open discussion with you to give you more information on how you can go about protecting your geographical indication. But I'd encourage you to write down your ideas and to share it with us, and then we will point you in the correct direction of which intellectual property right would best address what you're trying to achieve. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Bellamy. So yes, again, we have the floor open at this time. If you want to ask any questions or any comments, please feel free to do so. Of course, maybe while I wait on some questions, I can take the liberty as the moderator to perhaps pose a few. So I wanted to ask Mr. Heron. He spoke about the several phases that are currently being outlined in terms of the next steps for the nation branding efforts of the government. So I was wondering whether there had been any sort of timelines, which may have been even roughly established in that regard, and whether the process has been inclusive of some of the other ministries and agencies and maybe even the private sector. How is the process being managed? So, Mr. Heron?
Yes, thank you very much, Dr. Goffe. There in terms of the structure being established, we're going into phase one now of 3 phases. We've done a preliminary phase in terms of the research. What we've done, we formed a steering committee and a technical working group that will drive and direct the thought process behind development of the nation brand. In terms of the size of the technical working group, it's quite a comprehensive group that we have. So, for example, the steering committee members, and this is for phase one, consists of the Honorable Prime Minister, and then represented by the different ministries: Ministry of Culture, Gender, Entertainment and Sport, Ministry of Industry and Investments and Commerce, Ministry of Tourism, and then also JAMPRO. There's also, as I mentioned, the technical working group then reports into the steering committee, and the technical working group consists of, I think at this moment, up to 20 members across ministries, departments, and agencies, as well as academia, diaspora representatives, and youth representatives as well, in addition to private sector associations. So what we want to ensure is that there is a collaborative effort and there's a clear consensus, because the nation brand has to be reflective of the ethos of the nation on a whole. In terms of the timeline, we've actually been pushed back in some regard as it relates to COVID, as we all have. But the phase one is supposed to be a 7-month period in terms of developing the strategy, 6 to 7 month period. And then the execution is determined by what the consultant comes up with in terms of the time frame for implementing and creating the collateral. So from a phase one perspective, in terms of generating this strategy, we're looking at 6 months, because it is going to involve an extensive collaborative approach. So stakeholder consultations across the different ministries, departments, and agencies, as well as the private sector, academia, and youth and associations, different associations. I hope that sufficiently answers your question.
Yes, yes, thanks for that detail. Right, just want to hear and share that it's multi-layered, right? And it's not only government, private sector as well. Very important. Sorry, go on.
No, I was just saying that it is happening. It is, we're pushing through, so to speak, because I think that is something that we need as a nation. And I actually want to take this opportunity to really commend the Jamaica Tourist Board and the job they've been doing in terms of, representing Jamaica on the global scale, because their thorough and effective representation is one of the reasons why we are a global cultural powerhouse. So I just wanted to make that comment, to make it clear, and the quality of branding.
Yes.
You hear me?
Yes, man, we're hearing you.
Right, the quality of branding and the brand image that we're putting forward. I just want to make that very clear. It is extremely appreciated, and it is good that we can build on that.
Yes, for sure. I mean, I think if you look at the history of the branding of Jamaica, definitely, as Mr. White said, the tourist board is there in the early, pre-independence days, what I mean, with the name and the brand of Jamaica out there, even before some of us, even ourselves, know what the brand is, So definitely, long-standing commitment in that regard by tourism. Mr. White, you want to share anything on that point?
You're on mute.
Mr. White, we're not hearing you. I think you're on mute. Yes.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, I'm sorry. I was saying thanks for that commendation. I will be sure to pass it on to the team because we work extremely hard. I just thought while you were saying it that I would share for the benefit of the other persons on the webinar some important statistics that is always relevant to, because at the end of the day, you can build a great brand, you can do fantastic marketing campaigns, but it's the result that counts. Nobody measures, go back and see how well the campaign was. They go back and see how well the result is.
Yes.
It took Jamaica 47 years to reach its first 1 million visitors. Sorry, 45 years to reach its first 1 million visitors, and 50 years to make its first billion revenues. It then went to 9 years after that. It took 9 years to make our second million visitors, reach 2 million visitors, and 5 years to get to 2 billion in revenues. After that, it took 7 years to get to 3 million visitors. And it took us 15 years to grow revenues it took us 15 years to grow to 2 billion in revenues. Then after that, it went 6 years. So the time between the second million visitor and the 2 million visitors and 3 million visitors went down from 7 years to 5 years. So what it is saying is that the output of the positioning and work that we do to market tourism and to market the destination is getting more efficient, because we are improving or growing our visitors by blocks of million in shorter time span, and at the same rate we are also shortening the time frame to add $1 billion in earnings to every million growth in visitors as well. So when you look at it from that perspective, the efficiency rate that we are getting at a time when we are also spending less budget marketing the destination stands to reason that we believe, and we continue to believe, that the way the destination is positioned to drive the tourism product as a brand is definitely worth the money we spend on it, which has also gone down in quantum compared to what we were spending in the first 40-50 years of tourism marketing. Just thought I'd bring that to the conversation.
Okay. Okay. Thank you, sir. Thank you. I did see a question flash by. I don't know, Mr. Hope, could you just bring it up so we could see? I didn't get to see. Right. So this question is: do you offer any support and/or guidance to businesses in the diaspora with an aim to become brand ambassadors for Jamaica? So that's one of a question for Mr. White.
We work very closely with the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and all of our missions around the world. In fact, our offices, the Tourist Board offices in Canada, in Germany, and in London, are housed in the embassy in those countries. So we work extremely close. In fact, in each of those offices, JAMPRO also is housed in those offices. So JAMPRO, the embassy, and the Tourist Board work extremely close in these countries. And what we tend to do is we do a lot of diaspora outreach together. So wherever you see one, you see all three. And it allows us to be extremely interactive and extremely nimble in responding to the needs of the diaspora. And from that perspective, so the answer is yes. Wherever you are and you are seeking to have a diaspora engagement with any of these agencies or arms of government, we are usually there and ready to support and to provide guidance. And in any event, if we are asked to do more by way of providing even deeper support, economic and otherwise, we usually stand ready to do so. I hope that answers the question.
Yes, I think so. I think so. I hope so for our audience member. I see a follow-up question. What resources are available in the UAE? I know we have quite a large population of Jamaicans and growing in that part of the world. So I don't know if you can ask that start.
From a Tourist Board perspective, and I'm sure Gabriel will jump in from the JAMPRO side, because JAMPRO may have actually more leverage in JAMPRO, and Foreign Affairs may have more leverage in the Middle East than we do. The Tourist Board focus have been in areas where we can drive, airlift arrangements, either direct or through connecting points to Jamaica. We have not yet focused a lot of energy and effort on the UAE, though it is part of our path forward in future years, because that area of the world has grown exponentially over the last 10 years. The level of access to amiable access to wealth and to the desire to travel the world is great. So we are looking at that, but we have to be focused ultimately first on the areas where we have the ability to grow and continue to grow rapidly. We have just in the last 18 months turned our focus to Southeast Asia, particularly in Japan, India, and to some degree in South Korea. We have looked at China to some degree, but China is a slightly different approach because the cultures are so different, and the means are also very different. But we are very focused right now on India, particularly the wedding and romance market, and in Japan, where we have had significant success in the past. These are also very connected cities through Europe and through North America. And so that allows us to be able to build travel routes, which is an important part of any destination marketing plan. So from a UAE perspective, it is going to be part of our path forward. It is not yet upon us, because we have to begin to see how we will manage the air transportation part of that equation before we can decide to invest more of our already reducing resources to enable new markets. I don't know if Gabriel wants to add anything from a JAMPRO perspective in terms of investments and other business development opportunities.
Sure, I'll jump in here. Thanks for that, Donovan. JAMPRO has a program called Economic Diplomacy Program, where we engage what we term our diplomatic missions and consular posts. And Asia is a market. Asia and Africa and the Middle East is also is a region that we focus on, and there are different resources that we leverage in that regard. There has been a lot of talk in terms of developing a more active involvement in UAE, because there are quite a number of Jamaicans over there now. There was a visit to Dubai recently as well. So I know that through the economic diplomacy program, we will be able to expand or extend our reach to United Arab Emirates through our honorary consuls or foreign services offices who represent that region. So in that regard, the individuals would be able to contact the necessary consulate in that area and advise of the economic diplomacy program, and from there look at investment opportunities or just general business engagement through that program. We're having a series of webinars and meetings that we have scheduled. It's a fairly comprehensive program. So I will encourage Kez Bennett to reach out in that regard, and we can share the necessary information. Thank you for the question. Very good question.
All right. Thank you very much for that. I see a follow-up question about how or what are the requirements to become a brand ambassador. I know that we had touched on that earlier. I think that was from the JTB perspective.
Yeah.
Mr. White, I don't know if there are any particular requirements or criteria for persons to become brand ambassadors.
Brand ambassadorship it has become more of a cliche than anything else. To be fair, we're all brand ambassadors as Jamaicans. That's just my personal view on it, and that's the view I share whenever I'm asked this question. I believe ambassadorship comes from the heart. Your ability to speak, to take care of yourself, and to represent brand Jamaica always and at a particular level and a particular way is first and foremost in the heart. And so I say to all Jamaicans, wherever you are in the world, you are a brand ambassador. I don't need to give you a criteria to be a brand ambassador. And so, what we do from a Jamaica Tourist Board perspective is we take the focus off the individual as ambassadors and put the focus on the strength and power of our relationships across all the markets where we have a footprint. And where in those markets, there are Jamaicans who want to work with us to promote Jamaica. We enable them. We enable them through providing communication tools, providing, branded material if that is required. If there are particular activities that they feel that they can bring to bear on the tourism product in terms of driving the awareness of what we're doing in the various marketplaces. We ask them to create and submit a plan, and if that plan is feasible and we can, build our own teams around it for support in those markets, we support it, because that essentially is what it's about. So I say the only criteria you need to have to be a brand ambassador that we will work with is to have Jamaica in your heart and to live and breathe all things Jamaica. If you do that and you're willing to do that all the time, you can consider yourself a brand ambassador. If you have a plan, specific plan that you want us to look at to support you, send it to us. You can send it through any of our portals. whether it's jtbonline.org or through Visit Jamaica. There's a number of email addresses listed there. You can send it to us and we'll reach out to you. As I said before, our offices in London is at the embassy, in Germany is at the embassy, in Canada, in Toronto is at the embassy. In Miami, we have an office in South Miami, which serves the United States. So those are our 4 external offices, and we have 2 in Kingston, one in Kingston, one in Montego Bay. And then we have representatives spread across the world in different parts of the world. So reach out to us. I mean, as long as you have a plan and you want us to support you with that plan and it will help us to meet our own objectives, happy to work with you.
Persons don't have to be Jamaicans to be a brand ambassador, as long as you have Jamaica in your heart.
Absolutely.
Okay, cool. Fine. I wanted to ask, okay, I see a brand ambassador question actually, so maybe I'll stick on that point. Right, I see it's a comment from Mrs. Forrester James. My brand ambassadors are the marketing personnel who reside in the different regions or countries. Right, okay, so persons who are working with Jamaicans in foreign jurisdictions, who are also maybe handling or promoting Jamaican brands, can also be considered a brand ambassador in that way. I think you're quite right, Mrs. Forrester James. Yes, that would be so. So I wanted to ask about, when we look at the brand of Jamaica and what Jamaica is, then, we see the tourism as being very visible. But as Gabriel had in his presentation, it's multifaceted, so we have the sports, the music, the food, drama, the, flora and fauna. And so I would like to hear from you, Gabriel, what is the thinking in how to engage these different parts of the brand, which maybe need to be engaged differently, right? So how you may perhaps protect and enhance and support the culinary part of the nation brand, could be different from, for example, how one might seek to protect the music part or the protection of the natural flora and fauna. So I'd like to know, what's the thinking in terms of how the different parts of the nation brand can be protected within this whole campaign.
Yes, very good question. And this is actually the real genius part of developing the nation brand. That how do you generate a unifying messages for all the major industries, services, cultural expressions, ethos, emotions, groups within one country. And in all my readings, it spoke about this is the most difficult stage. This is the most difficult phase. Those stakeholder consultations are critical. And which is why they initially they thought was 6 months to develop the ideation around a strategy. But if you think about it, 6 months may not even be long enough to really get a good grip of the extent of the stakeholder engagement and consultation that you have to develop to then create a cohesive message. So there's no quick way around it. In essence, there's no quick way around it. You really just have to get down there and work in terms of getting the opinions and the thoughts on all the stakeholder groups, right, and trying to fuse it into one ultimate nation brand. And it will be a painstaking process. It will be a very strategic, that requires fanatical focus to ensure that the message not only resonates with the local population and the Jamaican people, but also generates global interest from a business aspect, from an investment aspect, from a trade aspect, from a tourism aspect. So it's a tall ask, in essence. But it's something that in all my research is shown that is really the crux of the matter. So it's an excellent question, Marcus. That process, that those stakeholder consultations, they have to be extensive, they have to be thorough, and they have to be representative of all the main stakeholders as a country that we can put forward. And so we really have to ensure that the mechanism that we put in place in the stakeholder consultations are rigid and will produce a good result.
Right, right. I mean, and I don't know, maybe there's some possibility to have some differentiated, kind of branding for the several sectors, but maybe still related to each other. Like what you see, Great Britain has, culture is great, and food is great, and everything is great.
Right, right.
Their own
So there will be sub brands, or sub elements of the main overarching brand, but it is a difficult task. And particularly, what is also important is because the tourism brand is strong, and we don't want to, we have to hold on to that brand equity that Donovan clearly showed over the years. We've generated a lot of value behind the Jamaica tourist brand. So we have to take that into consideration as well, because we can't, that is our prime importance. So again, it is not an easy task. One of the initial thoughts around it was getting some amount of national consensus around what the proposed nation brand would be. That there is still thought around that process and how it will unfold. So there's no final decision where that is concerned. But again, it's really about the stakeholder consultations and generating the information and bringing it to a final idea, because it has to represent a central idea for the nation.
Yes.
So that is critical.
So, what I'm going to also ask Ms. Bellamy to address, is that, of course, with the brand, of course, is to maximize the potential of it for Jamaica and Jamaicans. And so we have to have in there, of course, a particular business approach and strategy, which I think, IP has the framework already to be able to provide in terms of at least licensing and, how to commercialize, the brand appropriately. So I want to ask Ms. Bellamy, what are some of the strategies that, we could look at in terms of how to maximize the branding from an IP commercialization standpoint?
Okay, thanks for that question, Marcus. I think this is critical and important because when we think Jamaica, most people think of the normal tourist offerings, but there's a lot more to us as Jamaicans, especially as it relates to our innovation and the creative aspect of us. And I use creative here in the widest sense of the word, I'm sorry. For example, I'm not sure how many persons are aware that it was Jamaicans who invented a machine that is now being used by the Mayo Clinic in the United States of America for the teaching and training of medical personnel as it relates to doing operations on the heart. That is a machine that we invented here in Jamaica. That's just one aspect of our innovation. Sometimes, and I think we limit ourselves in that we come up with ideas, but we don't take it to the next step. The next step, as Dr. Goffe just mentioned, is for us to use the existing legal regimes to protect what we have and to thereby earn from it. So persons will think of our music. People replicate and use Jamaican music all the time. But once they use it, our musicians and our creators of our music, they earn, because each time someone uses your work and you have your work protected, and in the music industry, that's perhaps the easiest form of intellectual property rights protection, which is copyright protection. So once you're a member of a collective management organization and someone uses your work, then you have a revenue stream. As an inventor in Jamaica, what we would encourage you to do is to utilize the IP regime. So you come into JIPO and any other jurisdiction where you hope that they will use your invention and you protect your invention. Once you've protected your invention, it is yours to do whatever you want to do. You have the exclusive right. And as was mentioned, let's say you come up with a fantastic invention that can solve global problems, and you think to yourself, okay, I have this wonderful invention, but I have no money. I can't mass produce it. What am I going to do? How is this going to be of any benefit to me? What you can do is to enter into an agreement to license the technology that you have come up with. So someone will produce it on your behalf, and you will still be able to benefit from that technology. Jamaica recently moved up in the Global Innovation Index, which is quite significant for a small island development state. So we have the resources here. Our people are extremely creative, extremely innovative, but sometimes we hold ourselves back. And I think what we need to understand is that there are mechanisms in place where we can license what we've come up with. So you don't necessarily have to have all of the resources to produce your innovations. You can produce them, and you can, what you need to do though is to ensure that you put an attorney at law who is versed in intellectual property law, who will help you to draft the terms of this agreement so that you will really benefit from it. But just as an aside, but not really an aside, there are in Jamaica at present technology innovation support centers. We have, I think, the foundation too would be the University of the West Indies and the University of Technology. At those technology innovation support centers, they have the benefit of getting the expertise from JIPO and also from the World Intellectual Property Organization in teaching them how to license any technologies they come up with and how also to protect the technologies they come up with. So these are areas in which we as Jamaicans need to focus also on that brand to let the world know that we are innovative. I'm going to go back in time. Prior to the decriminalization of ganja, we had a number of scientists in Jamaica who utilized what we refer to as the weed to come up with two significant pharmaceutical products. One was Counsel, the other was Asthmasol. These are pharmaceutical products that help with the treatment of diseases of the eye and basically with asthma. So we have the technology, even though some would argue, oh, you're a developing country, but even with our limited resources, we were able to come up with two significant pharmaceutical products. That still exists. What we need to acknowledge and to recognize is that we're not to feel limited based on our size or our location or anything. Our innovations can be protected locally, they can be protected internationally, and we can have licensing arrangements in place so that we can benefit, so that we're not only associated with our culture and our creativity in a narrow sense, but in the wider sense that we touch on concern on all areas of the development of our societies. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Bellamy. Right, so see we're at 3:05. So we've been here now for about 2 hours, so I don't see any further questions. I think we can probably conclude. I want to thank our speakers who have with us this afternoon. I want to thank Mr. Gabriel Heron, Vice President of Marketing at JAMPRO. I want to thank Mr. Lilyclaire Bellamy, Executive Director at JIPO, and of course Mr. Donovan White, Director of Tourism at the Jamaica Tourist Board. This is a topic which will be sure to be continued. You know, as Mr. Heron said, it's a complex, multifaceted issue, and so it will take the wide consultations of government agencies and of the private sector, and of course, the heart for us all to find some creative solutions to how we can best protect and manage and profit, ethically from our nation brand, our strong nation brand. So I want to thank you all for joining us. I see a comment from Mrs. Forrester James thanking the presenters. And yes, I want to thank you too for staying with us for this 2-hour session. Please continue to follow us on our social media, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, etc. for our ongoing JIPO webinar series. You will be notified, of course, of those that are coming for next month and for December. So thanks again, and we look forward to having your participation in the future. The poll has just now been launched. Yes. So we're going to launch a quick poll asking you just for, I think it's 4 questions, for some quick feedback. Won't take too much of your time. Please just take a minute or two to complete that for us online before you log out. All right, so thanks again to JAMPRO and to JTB. Thanks to you all for joining us. I say, this topic is one which will continue not only for us here in Jamaica, but for other countries in the world who are dealing with this issue as well. At JIPO, as Bellamy said earlier, we have at JIPO been cooperating with several countries who, with Jamaica, we have developed a joint proposal for the protection of country names and geographical names of national significance in the trademark system and both in the domain name system as well. With the new top-level domain names now being allowed globally, which comprise country name, people can register their domain name with a .Jamaica, a .jm, a .Kingston, etc. And so these have now a more high-level, global computer-based, infringement of our national brand. And so there's a need for us to now partner, I think, across the different sectors. So Jamaica has been leading a group of like-minded countries comprising Georgia, Iceland, Indonesia, Liechtenstein, Malaysia, Mexico, Monaco, Peru, Senegal, Switzerland, and the UAE. And we're all currently engaged at JIPO, at the Standing Committee on Trademarks, Industrial Designs, and Geographical Indications, to see how best we can have in place some international law or policy that can help in the protection of our country name and nation brand. Particularly important for us as, again, developing countries, small island developing states, right? So we will, of course, keep you abreast of these global developments, as well as we seek to work nationally to have these nation brand elements properly protected. Thanks again. Do complete the survey quickly, and we look forward to seeing you here on our JIPO webinar series in the near future. So persons who may have further questions or need further information, of course, you can email us at info@jipo.gov.jm, and check us out on our website, www.jipo.gov.jm. Our social media handles, of course, JIPO Online. We're on YouTube. These webinars are also recorded, and so you can view it again to get your favorite snippets on our social media platforms as well. Of course, when you want to register your trademarks, your own brands, feel free to contact us by phone or email or come to the office. So thanks again. Enjoy the rest of your afternoon, and we look forward to seeing you again in the future.